What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
Miller.
Jammin Jon.
And we have an album review for you. And this one is much anticipated amongst the people here at this table. We are talking about the newest album from Aborted, Maniacult. This comes out on the 10th of September on Century Media Records, formed in 1995 in Belgium, though this is more of an international band now, considering you have two Americans and an Italian in the band, as well as they are Belgian frontman, the only original member, Svenko. So this band has been around for a while, pummeling the living shit out of their listeners with intense death metal slash gore grind slash flat out brutality.
They're great at what they do.
Oh yeah, it's high octane at all times, pretty much.
This is going to be insane live.
Now, an interesting thing to note, though they had picked up a second guitarist, Harrison Paultuto from Vale of Panath, he does not appear on here. I guess he left earlier this year. So all of the guitar work on here was handled by their longtime guitarist now, Ian Jekalis. So I thought that was kind of interesting going in because I think this is the first one in a while they've only had one guitarist on the album. But I'll be honest, it certainly has not affected them in any negative way at all.
No, and actually I think it makes everything tighter.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought they sounded a lot more tight on this
you
record.
got one guitarist doing the rhythm tracks and everything. Everything is the same. There's no of those like little idiosyncrasies between guitarists or whatever.
No, like passing along, like, oh, I have this cool riff. What do you think about a lead on top of this? This guy probably constructed the songs knowing full well what sort of lead melody goes on top or what sort of dissonant atmospheric tremolo will be on top of it, because you get a lot of that on here.
Yeah, right away with Verdurf.
Verdurf. I don't know what Verdurf is. It's a funny word, but it probably means something far more sinister, because generally that's sort of the thing with Aborted. But really cool intro track, and generally, yeah, everyone knows I bitch about intros, but this is musical. It sets up everything.
Yep.
And it's one of the few slower moments on the album, because once you get to the title track, the next track, Maniacult, fuck. You are just about to get your face ripped off.
Absolutely.
Blazing speed, Ken Badine, the maniacal drummer that he is.
Yeah,
Wow. But one of the cool things I noticed right away is I think this album is better about making the riffs stand out. And again, like coming back to the fact there's only one guitarist in here, but this opening flurry, the riff is very distinct. And all throughout this album, the riffs are very distinct. Not just because the production here, I think, beefs up the guitars a bit, but the fact that they're looking for more distinct riffs on top of these insane blast beats, turnovers. You even have D beats on here. The drum work on here, I think, is some of the most varied that Ken Badine has had, but I mean, it's Ken Badine.
Yeah.
It's a monster.
He does a great job of maintaining a groove through just a blistering drum pattern.
Yeah.
And they do a great job working together to maintain that sound sonically of a groove, but just it's an assault on your ears, but it grooves. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really cool because, you know, he can like take, you know, all right, here's like the basic riff. I was like, okay, I have 3 different drum patterns I can do over that over the course of maybe 2 measures, and it's going to be wild. But the cool thing is they can keep building on top of that. Like, while he's doing that, they can add a melody on top of that, and then you have Sven. Sven is one of my favorite extreme metal vocalists. He is flat out sick.
Yeah, him and Travis Ryan,
I
think, are 2 of the most unique vocalists.
Dynamic as hell. Like, you get the big shifts, you know, from those really gurgly lows to just nasty high-pitched screams. And it's kind of cool with some of the screams on here. They kind of work in almost some blackened atmosphere. Portal of Vacuity and Impetus Odi both have really interesting kind of blackened atmosphere to them, but I would never call this blackened death metal in any second. This is just flat out insane death metal the entire time, but those added atmospheric things that kind of make it sound creepy and sinister and evil really adds a lot to this.
Aborted does really well with that, though, anyway.
Yeah.
Most all of their albums, at least from like Global Flatline on, just have a creepy kind of horrifying atmosphere to them anyway.
And his vocals, I mean, typically I get on both of his styles, really, that low gurgly and the high stuff. are two of the things that I typically don't like about death metal, but he does them like so well that I like him. I like him in this album, and he just does everything so well.
He's very dramatic. Like, there is almost like an element of theater to the whole thing. Like,
it's dynamic.
Yeah.
It moves and it flows. It's not just one or the other.
Yeah. His cadences are varied. Sometimes he'll stretch out like one word and say it like with a weird intonation to it, but it all kind of adds to it. Like, either way, he's going to sound like a low gurgling demon or a shrieking demon, and that's pretty much the two main gears. There's kind of a mid-range, like, hardcore shout in there too, but either way, he's matching the intensity of the music at all times, if not sometimes outdoing it.
Yeah, and making it interesting to listen to.
And speaking of vocals, one that we all found favor with, Nick was, while we were jamming, Nick was reading the lyrics.
The only song I read the lyrics to.
Yep. And the lyrics to Grotesque are just entertaining.
The quote of the year on any album, "Yet treats for me come from the brown canal."
I mean, it's something about rectal love goo, separating shit from farts.
Yep, which we've all been through.
We've all been there, okay? Sometimes it's a gamble and you don't want to push too hard.
Sometimes you lose that fight.
There's something about jalapenos in there and volcanic eruptions, and I don't think he's actually talking about volcanoes. I think he's talking about a butthole.
It's shit kitchen.
And he's serving
shit kitchen
whore turds.
With Ben.
Whore turds. Yep, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the fun thing about that was, like, the entire time I was listening to this, you can play this for someone who is clearly on the outside of extreme metal, like, oh, they're probably talking about Satan or something like that. It was like, no, I kind of wish they were.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you gotta have fun with it. And Aborted never skimps on the fun.
I agree.
And that is, like, something that always keeps me coming back to them, that and the brutally intense music that they constantly put out. And, you know, with albums here lately, I think they're mostly about trying to hit that same level of brutality. It's about a consistency thing, kind of like Cannibal Corpse. They want to keep that aggression up and keep delivering solid albums. Maybe not with the most variance, but making sure they check all the boxes and deliver a solid album every time.
Another thing I like about Aborted is that none of the songs sound the same. There's memorable moments, there's hooks in each song that make them that make them stand out from one another, and this record is no slouch on that either. It seems like nowadays in metal too, you get a lot of songs that sound the same because they're trying to deliver one point of focus instead of the varied.
Yeah. Aborted's focus is a little all over the place, but it's always fun and gory and occasionally pooey. One of my favorites on here was Dementophobia. I love this song because this is almost kind of an odd throwback, and it's almost kind of unaborted, which doesn't sound like a real word, probably because it isn't.
Unaborted?
But it's more like a thrash song, except Aborted wrote it. Like, there are thrash riffs on there. There's even some major chords in there, which kind of is not an Aborted thing. Like, everything's supposed to be just, you know, insanely heavy, and major chords sound too happy often. But there are some in there, and they deliver some cool thrash hooks. There's even, like, gang vocals and D beats in the song.
A lot of hardcore nods.
Oh.
Yeah, that little hardcore riff at the end there. This fucking song hits. It hits like a ton of bricks.
It's spinning.
Thrashy as fuck. It's very Carcass Arch Enemy-like, but then at the very end you're reminded, no, this is Aborted. The last, like, 25 seconds are just a full-on assault, and you're reminded, we may dabble in here and there, but we are fucking aborted, and that's how we're gonna end this motherfucker.
Absolutely. I mean, and the cool thing about this, again, on this album in particular, when it comes down to Aborted, slowing down riffs and kind of just letting, like, Ken and Sven go kind of nuts. Like, there's a lot of just good syncopated chugs in here that really drive, like, really good hooks, especially on the title track. That song has some incredible, like, decapitated level
That's one of my favorite tracks on the album by far.
One of my favorite songs is Portal to Vacuity, and it's just pedal to the floor, relentless, right off, and then you get this big, ominous kind of sounding solo. They do, the reason why I think it wraps up this album, they do a great job in this song in particular, wrapping everything around.
Yes.
And they go from just straight relentless to this big ominous solo into just a crushing verse. and they do a great job bringing it around back to the Aborted sound, that just relentless assault. And it speaks to this whole album. They had the intro, and they had that middle thing, and I kind of got on Carnifex a little bit for having the middle song, the Verbolgen.
Well, it goes with the Verdurf. It's served on the side with a nice gravy. Don't ask what the gravy is. It's grotesque.
But I got on Carnifex a little bit. But in this album, man, you needed a fucking break. Like, it's just like...
The whole band needed a break.
Yeah.
You gotta have a vomit and maybe a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, this is just... It give you a chance to breathe almost. And then they tie it around again with that... Going to that... The reason I chose that song to talk about was at the end, they tie it back a little bit. They just have a little bit of that tying in the middle and that intro, and then they're just right into Aborted again, and to remind you again that this is an album. And that last song doesn't necessarily stand out in any way against the other ones. I mean, there's like, we've talked about the ones we really like, but this is an album. You really should take this in all in a sitting.
Yeah.
This is one of those albums that I would strongly suggest that, and I don't do that for many.
Now, this album isn't without its groovy pockets. In fact, groovy pockets are all over the place, but, of course, this is Aborted. It's generally kind of a blast fest, but when you get down to songs like Ceremonial Ineptitude and Drag Me to Hell, you get some solid grooves and big, epic, snarling riffs. Even in the last track, too, The Folly of the Gods, there is even a break on there with an epic solo that screams Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so when it comes down to like playing in their wheelhouse, I think their wheelhouse has gotten broader, in terms of musicality. The lead work on here, again, I think is some of the best that's been on an Aborted.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it's slowly been improving over the course of albums here. Like, usually they were just kind of like short little blips. I mean, they were good, but this time I think the leads really kind of just showcase what all is in Ian's wheelhouse.
Yeah,
and
they're a lot more melodic than I remember it being. Like
harmonies.
Harmonies and the sustain on the notes.
And Drag Me to Hell, granted it's a slower song, but let's be honest, this whole album is more like being shot out of a cannon straight into hell. Yeah. Or like a catapult. I don't know, whichever hurt more.
Dragging to it.
Right? Whichever one's gonna fuck you up more. Just yeeted into hell. Now, in terms of negatives, and man, I really had to go fucking searching. All right. In terms of the vocals, I love Sven's delivery. It's incredible. He seems to even be getting better at it. I wish they wouldn't do like the high-low layered as much. I like the vocal flips more just because that's what you get live, and it's really impressive. And I love the atmosphere in here. They're really good at atmosphere. The one thing that I miss, though, are the horror movie samples.
Me too.
There's really none on here. Now, granted, I don't think TerrorVision had a lot on it, but going back and listening to older Aborted, because that's what I do when I review bands that I love like this, I go back and listen to their older stuff. I love the horror movie samples, especially the Hellraiser shit they threw in. Mm-hmm. It added like another level of connecting with the band. Like, oh, I've seen that fucking movie too. It's awesome. I know exactly what scene it is because I'm a giant loser. But it's kind of missing that. But honestly, not enough to hurt this really at all, because Aborted did it again. They've been on a tear since Global Flatline, and that trend continues. This is a 4.5. This album is flat out relentless, but not without nuance, melody, groove, hooks. Like, I think possibly more hooks than there were on the last two albums, and I love those two albums. Right. It's a flat out massive, relentless album, and it just showcases Aborted doing their sound, but squeezing in like just a little bit of change, but nothing to throw you off the scent that you need this album if you're an Aborted fan, because this album is out to fuck you up and you should get it.
4.5 for me as well. I've been a giant Aborted fan for a long time, and this record is no slouch in the myriad of their albums. We name off tracks and such and go into depth and detail, but really this record as a whole is just a masterpiece. I have no gripes on production, which is crazy because normally I have production gripes.
I mean, it's cleaner, but it kind of needs to be.
Yep. Mm-hmm. There's so many hooks in these songs, and the riffs, the overall structure of everything I think is better presented than it has been as of late, which is another monumental tier to be on. But yeah, this is Aborted. This is all of what I like about Aborted, and I love getting just pummeled every time I jam a record. So 4.5, definitely go get this.
I'm going to give it a 4.5 too. I had very, very minor gripes, even like the samples and stuff. Yeah, I kind of missed the horn samples a little bit, but they do a fantastic job of layering everything in, and the mix is great. Nothing's overbearing. You can hear the guitars, you can hear the solos. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5. I have very minor gripes with this. This is everything I like about heavy music in general. Not even selecting some sort of fucking subgenre of whatever. Just music in general. It's very well put together. It's a complete album, and it's worth a listen to from start to finish.
Yeah, brutality with hooks. That's what we love here.
Yes, and we also love when you hit subscribe and the notifications and all that good jolly jazz shit.
I mean, jolly jizzy jazz is probably something they would sing about. It's not on Grotesque. It's on a song.
Grotesque.
No.
Maybe the next album.
But we're also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's also a link below down there for that. And we have our big giveaway too. 7,500 subs. Once we get to that mark, we are going to do a little stack of 8 CDs with the new Cannibal Corpse on there. And all you have to do to enter that is comment on the video linked below. It's also playing on our channel. And you are in. And we are over the 7,000 mark. It's insane. It's kind of crazy, but...
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. We love doing this, and we're going to keep doing this just because, well, there's so many damn metal albums I want to listen to, and I want to talk about them with you.
Especially ones like this.
Oh, yeah. And we still have shirts for sale. If you would like one, hit us up on thrallsofmetal@gmail.com. Send us an email there and put shirts in the title, and we will get back to you, get your information, and hopefully sell you a shirt. So with that, I thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.